Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Elena with Napa Bookmine. I am so incredibly thrilled to be the first event for local Jimmy Hayes's brand new, gorgeous photography book, VERITAS. And congratulations to Jimmy. We have sold 113 copies so far, which is truly phenomenal, particularly for a book of this size and price. And oh my God, it's just so pretty, you guys. I've been touching it for like 3 days. It's amazing. If you don't have your copy yet, we are sold out, but I have many more coming. So I'm gonna put in the chat box the link for you to purchase, claim your copy, and Jimmy is of course signing all of them.
I'm getting
and if you want it personalized,
all kinds of complaints about you guys being sold out, by the way, today.
How were we to know we would sell over 100 copies before its on sale date? Just spectacular. So we're so excited. We got more in today, I believe, that should be available for purchase tomorrow, and we're getting a whole bunch more early next week, it should be. I'm just gonna let one more person in. Okay, so with that being said, Jimmy, why don't you get started and tell us all about you and your work in this gorgeous new book?
Sure, thanks. Well, thanks for stopping by, everyone, to listen. It's very strange. The whole situation of being in this moment, doing this right now, is very strange. My career's taken all kinds of different paths, and this part of it has been one of the most unexpected and certainly one of the most exciting moments for me. The vast majority of my career was in, well, I guess has been in wine. After it started in restaurants, when I was not doing very well in college, I decided to start working at a restaurant to get a little bit of extra beer money, and that turned into a pretty serious career in restaurants with a focus on wine. And then after that lifestyle became a little bit more difficult, having a family, I transitioned to working for vineyards here in the Napa Valley. I've lived here for about 13 years with my family, and starting to work in vineyards and operations and sales and marketing and other sort of executive functions was a wonderful career adjustment for me, and it really made me fall in love with the Napa Valley. It really made me fall in love with wine, and after a number of years of working in and around wine and in all different kinds of capacities, and being able to travel around the world and see different wine regions, I guess you could say I started to develop a kind of a unique or personal view of things. I guess anybody probably would in that situation. I think in some way, shape, or form in my life, I've always been a kind of artistic person, and somewhere along the line in this career working with wine, I started taking photographs, which isn't something I studied. It's not something that I ever particularly cared much about, really, until probably it started with my son being born, who I think a lot of people, when they have kids, get out the cameras more than they ever had before, and certainly in our modern world, we have these cameras on us all the time, and I just kind of started snapping away, and pictures of the baby or the toddler turned into pictures of the baby and the toddler and landscapes and other more interesting places, and then the photography kind of evolved also into just sort of being, I guess, my view of the environment that I was living in here in the Napa Valley and wine country, and that's in the winery, that's in the vineyard, that's all these other places, and it became a bit of an obsession, to be honest, and to some extent, I think I was kind of doing it in secret a little bit. I had, and this is so cliche, and I understand that, and I apologize, but it started, the first place I started putting up pictures for people to see was actually on Instagram. So cliche. But I did it, and I had this kind of anonymous sort of almost like a secret kind of alter ego Instagram feed that I would put all these photographs up on, and I would sometimes say some reasonably deep, at least I thought there was reasonably deep stuff about some of these pictures, and they were pretty moody pictures, and they were kind of like austere, and they weren't really typical images that people see of wine country, and I was all kind of just using it as sort of an outlet to be creative, really, and be expressive, and I guess I was saying something reasonably interesting or unique because a lot of people started following along and taking notice, and it kind of very quickly and super organically turned into a professional life. So it became work in the best possible sense, not like bad work. When a designer friend of mine was working on a website for a winery here in the Napa Valley, and he thought that their specific needs visually were quite in line with this sort of austere kind of photography that I was doing, and so he asked me if I'd ever consider doing it professionally, and I thought that was a really interesting idea, and I said sure, and I was I didn't have any confidence in myself, and I thought show them the pictures and see if they like them, and they did, and I was hired to do this job, and it's really been a pretty remarkable remarkably paced climb ever since then. I've for a number of years I was taking photographs alongside I guess a day job working running a winery or doing winery consulting, and at some point it became clear that it would probably make a lot of sense for me to choose one path or another, because they were both becoming very busy careers, and I guess I chose photography, and that has for a few years now really been all that I do for work, which has been a wonderful change. It's all most of the work that I do, I guess commercially you would say, has a wine focus. So I do work a lot in Napa and Sonoma and other places with wineries, sort of documenting what they do in the process in I guess a way that is sort of unique to the way I see things. So it's been a wonderful evolution of career and life, and I really enjoy doing it. And quite amazingly, it's sort of worked its way into this incredible thing, which I'm not saying it's incredible. I'm saying, to me, the fact that exists is completely incredible. And what an amazing honor it is to be able to say that somebody thought the things that I was taking pictures of were good enough to create a book about. So sitting here right now is it's a lot of things have happened to bring us here, and all of it's been pretty spectacular and great and wonderful, and I'm really kind of amazed that it's all gone the way that it has, and I'm super excited that now today, I guess yesterday, this book was released out into the world, and people are starting to, I guess, buy it from the Bookmine and other places and bring it home.
Objectively, I can say it's pretty incredible.
Thanks.
I think you can say that.
I appreciate that. And there's a couple things about it that I think are different for sure than most, A, maybe that some people expect, and B, maybe that people are used to with respect to wine books in general. So, I don't actually see it really as a wine book. I see it more as an art book or a photography book, because I kind of categorize those two things sort of separately. When I think about art books, monographs, whether they're painters or photographers, whatever they are, those to me are about seeing things. It's their aesthetic experiences. Whereas a lot of the wine books that we have today really are, and more as time goes on and people get more interested in sort of these micro details, they're books about learning. They're things that people buy and read to gather more information about details and processes and soil and people and all kinds of things, and stories are getting so important in wine books, and the sort of the minutia of the information is like, it's almost like a currency these days. People are there's so much you can learn so easily about wine on the internet and all kinds of other places that people are really, that they're just learning more than ever. This book will probably teach you absolutely nothing about wine, totally on purpose. And I'll talk about that a little later when we look through some pictures as to why that was important. But this is a book for me that really is super personal, both from a design perspective and from an aesthetic perspective. It's when I created the proposal for this book for the publisher that I'm working with, if you were to look at what I gave to them and what is actually real, it's almost identical. There were a lot of ideas from an editorial perspective that, I'm pretty stubborn. I'm a really terribly stubborn person, and total, I'll admit it. And I push back on a lot of stuff because I really wanted it to be just like this. And really what it is it's just a totally visual experience. It's a collection of photographs that's introduced by a little bit of text. And then it's just a big, long, totally nonlinear, totally non-sequential collection of pictures that for me are just meant to each be individual sort of pieces of standalone art. And then there's a whisper of closing text at the end, and then there's there are some hints and some little captions and kind of an index of photographs at the back. But if you go through this book, you'll see this is just any random page. Every single page, there are no captions. There is no text at all. It's just, whether it's one image per page, whether it's, full images over 2 pages, or whether it's, sometimes, oh, wow, I got all 3 and totally lucky, or whether it's, laid out this way. It's just, it's just a visual experience that I think is nicely set up by the text. So I apologize to people who are interested in learning all of the super granular details about what's going on in each one of these pictures. It's not really in this book. It's in here, and you can always email and ask me questions if you want. I'll happily give my email out to the world so that they can learn more information. Some of you probably already have it. So it's I couldn't be happier with this, and I also couldn't be happier with the 2 people that agreed to sort of help me with a little bit of co-authoring in terms of forward and afterward. So super important to me was to have a couple people join in that who have opinions on the industry, whether it be wine or whether it be photography, because I think this book appeals to both people. And I just wanted a little extra perspective, and there were 2 people in mind very specifically that I really wanted to have join in, and fortunately they both said yes. So I asked a very long-time friend and just truly amazing, iconic American wine professional, Raj Parr, who's a sommelier, is a winemaker. He's all kinds of, he's a farmer now, to write a little something about the book as an introduction. And then from the world of photography, there's a gentleman whose name is Fred Lyon, who is, a total inspiration and total, icon to me, who's a San Francisco-based photographer who's in his mid 90s, still working, and has taken, in my estimation, some of the most incredible pictures ever taken of San Francisco. And if you don't know Fred Lyon's work, look it up right away. He's a remarkable talent. So to get those two guys, both of whom are truly inspirational people in my life, to join in was very, very exciting. So you'll get a little bit of perspective from Raj in the beginning, which is he wrote a wonderful short piece, and then at the end, Fred provided a super wonderful little coda that wraps up things in a really nice way. Fred has a remarkable experience, not just photographing San Francisco and other things commercially, but he has, probably been taking pictures of the wine industry in Napa Valley longer than anyone else alive. I would be shocked if there was anyone else who's been taking pictures longer than him. I think he started taking pictures in the Napa Valley in the 1950s, and has still been taking pictures here up until, even just a few years ago. So and he's produced some amazing collections of his work as well in book form that actually, from a visual and design perspective, were in the forefront of my mind when I was trying to lay this one out. So those are the special pieces of text. And I wrote an introduction for the book, and probably to talk a little bit about what it actually is all supposed to mean would be important. So, Veritas, obviously, maybe not, I don't know, if you study Latin, means truth. And there's a pretty well-known phrase in vino veritas, and wine is truth. And one of the most important things to me about taking pictures of wine, really of anything, is just kind of a fundamental core belief that anything can be visually very, very beautiful. I'll put up one image here to maybe help go through this point. Can you see my screen? Nice. So, when we see pictures of the wine industry, like the overwhelming majority of the time, they are overdone. It's always the sunset, and there's always hot air balloons in the background. And they're not exactly what I would call everyday real occurrences. One of the ways that I've found myself kind of talking about it is that a lot of wine photography seems to just be covering wine on its very best days. And as somebody that works around this, or I guess worked around it as an insider every single day, it's very, very clear and very, very sure that those absolute best days only happen once in a while. The perfect sunset, the perfect green canopy of a vineyard, that's an exception. That's not the rule. Everyday wine can be challenging, and it can be industrial, and it can be hard and sweaty and dirty, and those things happen if you understand the industry, if you work in the industry. They happen all the time. That's the norm. And so often, I think, because the goal with photography of wine is to sell or market an experience or a lifestyle, I think that we just push all that stuff away and say, these aren't things that necessarily are going to be interesting to people. Well, I think they're super interesting. I think they can be super beautiful. In fact, I think they can be actually quite a bit more beautiful because they're real. And when I settled on what the idea for this book was going to be, it was that I just wanted to put together, I've been taking at this point pictures there's about 7 years worth of pictures in this. And, there's so many different kinds of things done for different kinds of reasons, but I wanted to put a collection together that really showcased a lot of those more challenging, the images that have a more challenging kind of beauty, that are a sort of a more normal look at wine that people don't usually see. So in the the title was pretty easy to come up with. The collection is really meant to be a more truthful and a more honest view of what wine is. It's not like an expose or anything like that. It's all real and it's all good. Everything that's happening is good. It's not, like people are toiling away in the vineyards. It's just the work, and it's the vineyards, and it's the seasons as they are. And, you can see sometimes, I guess a lot of times photographers will sort of stylize pictures through the editing process. They can make them more saturated. They can make them more, some more beautiful or intensely colored. And if there's editing that happens in this book on my end, it actually goes the other way. So this is a great example. This picture is a great example. And this is the cover of the book in some way, shape, or form. And I always knew that this wanted to be the cover of the book. And I'm really happy that nobody said that it was boring and shouldn't be the cover, because I think it's really beautiful, and it's really a perfect image for a number of reasons that that tie into the idea of what the book is. So this is a vineyard in Carneros, which is, if you're not from Napa, it's to me probably the most beautiful part of the Napa Valley. Part of it's in Sonoma, part of it's in Napa, and you have these rolling, undulating hills that are just covered in vineyards, and they have this really beautiful, organic kind of almost sort of ocean-like flow to them. And there's a lot of vineyards in this area, very vast fields of vines. And when I was this picture's from a few years ago, at least 4 or 5 years ago, I think. I would get my camera and I would find a few minutes at sunset or dusk or something and go out and drive through the places that I liked the best and thought were the most beautiful, trying to find, good light and good scenes. And this vineyard, I took a picture of it one fall. And sometimes, if you're from the East Coast or not from California, in the fall, the leaves of the trees change colors, and it's very beautiful. And certain trees are certain colors, and some are orange and some are yellow and some are red. The same thing happens with grapevines. And so in the fall here, all the leaves on all the grapevines change color, and it's really kind of amazing how beautiful it can be. And sometimes you'll see dramatically different colors right next to each other, like a big rectangular block of orange and then a big rectangular block of yellow. And sometimes in vineyards, the different colors can be, a sign of unhealthy plants and unhealthy vines. And in other cases, certain different varietals actually change to different colors in the fall. And so this particular vineyard I saw one fall, and this big triangular area was like this dark, bright red, and everything else around it was yellow. And it was an incredible, incredible scene. And I remember I took a picture of it. I have it somewhere. But I always would come back to see how it changed, because I thought it was such a beautiful shape. And then this time that I came back, this is a springtime picture, a very early springtime picture. And that part of the vineyard that had been very, very red, maybe it was disease, maybe it was varietal, it was taken out and replanted with baby vines. And this is the moment in the life of a vineyard when, you can see there's these little white, what they actually are is they're little miniature milk cartons. And when they plant super baby young vines into the soil, they'll protect them with these, they're literally actually milk cartons that aren't being used. And that's to help protect them from frost and wind and things like that. And, if you were to ask somebody at a winery marketing department, and I've done that job, it's a great job and I love to do it, but like what are some of the things you would never ever put in a marketing brochure for a vineyard? A vineyard in that state would be probably at the top of the list. You want to, you want a beautiful, lush green canopy. You want, perfectly ripe fruit. You don't want industrial. And this is basically kind of an industrial moment in the farming process. And to me, you can't have the green canopy and you can't have the perfect ripe fruit without this stage in the viticulture process. Every vineyard starts like this. And to say that that is somehow not important, to me is missing something really, really core to the process. So I love the picture. I love the shapes. Landscapes to me are really fun. One of the things I like to take pictures of the most. And oftentimes I think they have some elements in them a lot like this picture that are a little bit more challenging and minimal. I'm gonna have a sip of wine. You should be drinking wine too. It's a wine book.
If anybody's drinking wine, tell us what you're drinking in the chat box so we can all enjoy it together.
I'm having a Kistler Pinot Noir, FYI. So that's kind of the point of the book, to have a collection of photographs that are, at least to me, are beautiful pieces of art from a composition standpoint. For me, composition and photography is basically everything. And some of the pictures we'll look through. If anybody has any questions about what we've talked about right now, shoot them over. But some of the pictures we'll look at, I think, do a good job of connecting in this idea of sort of the more real and everyday parts of wine that are still pretty awesome to see. So this next one, I don't know if anybody gets my emails. I've been emailing out some stuff about some of the pictures in the book leading up to it. And this is one that I thought, I had a lot to say about this one. This is like the reason that there are no captions in the book. And I told a little story about this picture in one of my last emails. I remember the first time I ever came to wine country in Napa. I was in my early 20s, and I was with my wife. She was my girlfriend then, and became my wife became my fiance on that trip. But I was young, and it was, it was a different time, and the internet wasn't the home of all of the information about wine or everything else like it is today. You had to learn from stuff in books. And I remember seeing a scene like this for the first time, and I just had no idea what it was. I was completely and totally bewildered by what I was looking at. It looked like some weird art project or alien landscape or something. I just had no reference point. We lived in New York City, and I'd never visited wine country before, and it was amazing. And I remember feeling like very curious, but also sort of very satisfied by not knowing something. It was kind of humbling in an interesting way. And I just kind of never ever forgot. I've always been obsessed ever since with these scenes. And if you don't know what it is, I'll tell you in a second. But I realized that it was, and subsequently have realized that kind of moment of not knowing something, of seeing something and not knowing what it is, and just seeing it for its form and its shape is kind of an incredible experience that we don't really get to have very much anymore, because we're so addicted to knowing what everything is, and we can get the information so quickly from our phones or from our computers or whatever. And that feeling from that day is pretty much the reason that I didn't want to have any descriptions on anything right in the front of, or right in the beginning of the book. I wanted people to get hopefully a nice setup through the text at the beginning. And then I just wanted them to see things. And if they weren't wine professionals, I didn't want them to have to worry about what it was. I just wanted them to see things for the visual impact of it. just to look at a picture and made to, just be made to feel a certain way and not have to worry too much about the details. Does anyone not know what this is? If you don't, it's what happens to a vineyard after the vines are done producing grapes. They've either become too sick or too old, or the farmer's decided that he wants to plant something else. So they go through and they systematically rip out all the rows, and then they bundle them into these little piles. And then after they're left to dry out a little bit, and the time is right in the season, they'll be burned and set on fire, and then the vineyard will be replanted again in the next year or 2 or 3 years after that. And now you see them all the time. I mean, now as somebody that lives in wine country, every place I go, I see that, and I always enjoy seeing them. And sometimes when they're just in the right configuration and they make a great shape or a great picture, I'll grab my camera and snap away. But landscapes again, for me, are a big focus, and this is actually a picture from Kistler Vineyards. And I think, what makes it a picture that I like, certainly the big blocks of color and big blocks of shapes, but also the fact that you've got this perfect lavender, you've got this perfectly curated grass, a gorgeous green, healthy vineyard, and then you've got a completely bare vineyard right in the beginning of its life being replanted, and all of those things matter together, and they all have a place in the story about wine. And then, the other thing that I think, and you might see some kind of a theme here with respect to the big shapes that are often in landscape pictures that I take. I love there to just be simplified information. A subject so often is not a great subject in pictures because there's too many other things happening around them in the image at one time. And I love this picture because it's a person harvesting grapes, which happens here at night most of the time at the best places. And there's nothing else you need to know in that picture. You need to know that they're in a big place, in a big vineyard, under the lights, doing the work. And to me, that's one of my favorite images in the book. That was taken up in the mountains above Oakville in 2017, just before the fires came, about a mile from that property. And the other thing you see a lot is you see everything is always clean and tidy in traditional wine photographs. People often, show these images of people in these nice clean outfits with these perfect bins of grapes. But if you've ever been to a pick, it doesn't happen that way. It is dirty and sweaty and hot and cold all at the same time. And it's a big mess, and it's a chaotic frenzy. And, this image to me is one that showcases very, very clearly what it actually looks like at a time when you're harvesting grapes. You're dirty, you're muddy, there's leaves all in the grapes. That's real life in the wine business. And I've always loved this image too, because it really brings me back to that day. That was in Sebastopol out in Sonoma. And those are Pinot Noir grapes. And photography for marketing and sales, and photography for art and emotion, to me are two different things. And anytime that I get an image like this, which really isn't going to be very useful to anyone from a commercial perspective, but it's just so visually, to me, this is just so visually exciting because there's so much happening it's so clear what's going on. These are the kinds of pictures that I get excited about. The longer I do this, the more pictures that I take of everything, the more I really get excited about these imperfect pictures that are kind of out of focus and a little bit gooey and not quite as sharp and crispy as the other ones, because I think it also has a way of sort of bringing you closer to what's actually happening, to the action, so to speak. And it's messy business. Dirty boots and 2x4s and fermenting grapes. Trying to see things in slightly different ways.
Jimmy, do you take these digitally or with a film camera usually?
So everything that I do is digital. I have no training in photography. I never took a photography class. I've never learned how to properly use the camera, use a darkroom, any of that stuff. So, for me, I think gosh, there's just so much to learn, and there's just so much to do to get photographs correct on a digital camera that film seems still to be a way off for me. And I'm sure that at some point I'll get to that place where that's something that I'm really excited about doing. But I'm not quite there yet. The thing I did just get was I did get a new digital camera that's basically a completely manual machine. There's no autofocus, there's no bells, there's no whistles. It's 100%, dialing in every picture manually on the camera, which is a different kind of photography that really slows you down. And that to me is sort of one logical step away from pictures with film. And so, the other parts of the business that people never see that are just as important as everything else happen in warehouses and happen totally behind the scenes. And there's always, I just believe so deeply that there's always something interesting to see wherever you are. I mean, there's always interesting people doing interesting things, and whether it's in a perfect vineyard or not makes no difference to me. So this is an image taken down in American Canyon at a warehouse where these bottles are getting wax applied to the top of them, and I remember just loving so much about the way that this looked, and and especially the colors. I just loved the black bottles, and I loved the blue sort of gate behind her, and that little pop of red where she's putting the first little bit of the wax on. And I mean, these kinds of things are just as much a part of the process as everything else.
Jimmy, Dina had a question, wondering if you could talk a bit about photographing at night.
Sure, we'll go back here. The last thing I wanted to say about this picture is, it was very important to me that everybody who was featured in the book was really excited about being featured in the book. And so everybody that was either from a vineyard, or whether they're a vineyard owner or whether they're a vineyard, a farm worker, or Araceli, who was working in the warehouse, I really, it was very, very important to make sure that everybody was on board. And I remember, she was so excited that she was going to get her picture in the book, and it's awesome. I made prints of these for each of the people that were in the book, and I'm going to give them to her. I give them to him the next couple of weeks, which is pretty exciting. So photographing at night is, gosh, it's really hard. Sorry, did I go too far? No, I didn't go far enough. So there's like really, truly only one thing that you need to make a nice picture, and that's light. And if it's the middle of the night and all that's happening is a little bit of a spotlight or a little bit of a headlamp on somebody's head, that makes for a really, really challenging situation. So I'll be honest, it took me years to figure out how to do it well. And still, like this morning, I was out this morning at 5 a.m. at a vineyard taking pictures in the dark of people harvesting. And, I probably took, I don't know, if I took 100 pictures, maybe 3 or 4 of them will actually be really, really lovely. Because it's just so difficult, to make a camera work the way you need it to work in that situation, and to get all of those lights, the very, very few that you have available, focused in just the right place, on just the right subject at the exact moment that you snap the shutter. It's very challenging, but it's the most rewarding. I mean, honestly, if you can get a shot like some of these where you can really know and see clearly what's going on, it's like finding a treasure. We spit wine on the floor. That's what happens. We taste and we get dirty and spit it into the drains. And these are the kind of photos, again, that don't often make it to our eyes. But gosh, I love these two guys, and I love the scene. And to me, this is another, it's just what happens. If you're involved in this business, it's just what happens every day. And I love that people get a chance to see some of this stuff that just is always behind the scenes. Like this one is something that never ever gets shown. There's no reason. This is such a little minute detail of farming, in the eyes of the general public. It's super important to the viticulturist. After you prune the vineyards, which you do every winter, you have to apply a little bit of kind of an ointment topical solution to the places where you made the cuts, to make sure that the weather, the rain, mold, bacteria, whatever it is, doesn't get inside of the fresh pruning cut and make the vine sick. So you go through and you take time to go and sort of dress every single cut. And it's such a cool part of the process. And I just loved this gentleman who had fashioned a paintbrush out of a piece of the vine itself, which I just thought was such a creative and interesting idea. And then, this is just the end of some very technical and very unromantic winemaking stuff happening. But gosh, to me, it's just like, I see that and all I want to do is take a picture, of all the, there's so many photographs I love in the book because of the way that they're composed and the colors and the shapes and the lines. And this is just one of those to me. So, after the wines are all, the grapes are all picked and the berries are all crushed and the juice separates out and it's in these big tanks, you'll do this process called pumping over, where you drain the wine out of the tanks and you pump it back over the top of the skins, which are floating on top of the juice in that same tank. And it's just kind of a big old messy, very utilitarian process. And I guess probably unremarkable to a lot of people, but super, super beautiful. Little abstract paintings like this can be left over at the end. That's some pictures. There's a lot more. There's about 150 pictures in the book.
Thanks for sharing those with us. What a treat. There's nothing in the chat box, but if anybody wants to jump in and chat or have a question at all, go for it. People are always shy to start.
I'm going to start.
I'll start, Jimmy. What are you working on now? Or are you still working on this? Are you laser focused on this book? Doing something different?
Well, so, you know, this book, I'll be honest, my only goal, well, there's a couple things happening with this book. One, there's a couple goals for the book, but there's a charitable component to it that's really important. So I've set up relationships with two foundations, one in Napa and one in Sonoma. The Farm Workers Foundation here in the Napa Valley and the Sonoma Grape Growers Foundation in Sonoma. And those are two organizations that directly host, fund all kinds of social programs to benefit the farm worker community in the respective counties. So, you know, every time I get a check for sales from this book, a part of it's going to both of those organizations. So the other goal with that is just I'm hopeful that this can lead to another book, which is already so basically done in my brain. But I have a lot of people that have told me that the first one is always the hardest, and I'm hopeful that this can be successful from a sales and marketing perspective, and therefore successful from a philanthropic perspective, and then hopefully we can do it again. But other than that, I work on taking pictures all the time. At this time of year, it's full speed ahead. I mean, I was up at 4:45 this morning, and we'll be up at 4:45 a lot of mornings next week, and it's exciting and really, really enjoyable this time of year. There's a lot to see.
Did you start, because I know harvest is sort of a rolling thing, you know, you start with certain grapes and then it ends with certain grapes, and are you doing all of it? Because that's a long time.
Yeah. You know, so people that I work with in Sonoma are getting to the tail end of harvest, or they're kind of right in the middle right now. So they've got Chardonnay and they've got Pinot Noir, a lot of them, and those are sort of wrapping up, or kind of mostly, at least in full gear. And then in Napa, we have, you know, some white wines and some other things, but obviously mostly Cabernet. And there is, it hasn't been an easy year. The crop loads are low. It's incredibly dry. We have the worst drought again we've ever had. And the last 2 days were, you know, almost 100 degrees, maybe over 100 degrees. And at this time of year, when you have a heat event like that, it gets everybody very, very concerned. And we have a warning that there's, you know, a potential lightning storm tonight, which could, you know, cause a fire or cause any other number of interruptions into the harvest season. So yesterday I got a call basically that said, we need you to come tomorrow morning because we're picking Cabernet. And I was definitely not expecting to be photographing most people picking Cabernet on September 9th. It's usually a very, very rare sort of early pick here and there at this time of year. And usually it starts happening in the next couple of weeks, but everybody really, you know, if something's going to go south with the weather or smoke, people really want to be able to have grapes picked off the vines and wine to be able to make that's safely tucked away in the cellar, not hanging out of the vines.
I feel like you're in a really unique position here in that because you don't just work at one or two vineyards, you can really get sort of a broad census of how winemakers and vintners are feeling about things. Do you feel that you can sort of get that sort of broad feeling more than maybe other people who are super, into their own winery and doing their own thing?
Yeah, I used to work at, one winery at a time. Yeah, you get really, in your own head and your own process. And I've learned a lot by spreading out and being connected to so many different people at one time. And it's always, if I'm gonna work with somebody on a photography project for their winery, the most important thing to start with is to figure out what's important to them. Because, some people are really happy to let me just do whatever I want and, take pictures of whatever is important to me. But, frankly, if somebody, you know, has things that matter to them, I want to know about it, because that's the kind of stuff that makes one person's project personal and unique to them. And you find out that everybody's got their own special things. Some people won't like a photograph because of the way that a vineyard looks, and I never would have even noticed it, even as somebody that's been thinking about vineyards for, I don't know, 20 years at this point. And some people, will not like something else that I totally didn't expect. So everybody has a unique view of the industry. There's so many smart and creative and talented people making wine in Napa Valley. It is a super unique place to do this kind of work, and I mean, it's really not all that possible anywhere else. I've been fortunate to find a couple opportunities in the last few years to go and travel internationally, and there's definitely more of that planned in the future. So maybe that's another book too. Maybe we can. The VERITAS is just about California wine, and that was another thing that was important, because that's what I see all the time, and that's what's really close to me. But the world of wine is huge, and I was in France a few weeks ago. I was in Spain a couple of years ago. I'll probably be in Italy next year, and then Germany and France again next year, assuming that we can travel at some point. So, gosh, there's just so many other things to see, and so many other cool things to take pictures of too.
Awesome. Totally agreed. Marianne says, it is truly evident this is a true labor of love. Great work, Jimmy. Such a lovely sentiment.
Thank you.
So we've got just a few minutes left. So if anybody wanted to ask any questions or say anything to Jimmy, feel free to unmute yourself and say it, or put it in the chat box, and I'll try to get to it before we finish up. Give everybody a couple minutes to decide if they want to say anything, or if Jimmy has any last things he wants to say. I think I see a couple people maybe trying to unmute.
Now's your chance.
No? Okay, well, anything you want to end on, Jimmy?
The reception of this whole thing has been completely unbelievable, and I'm just on the floor with, not just that it happened, and that I'm working with these great publishers, and that we were able to make this book that is like just I mean, it's a nice, I mean, I'm biased, I know, but gosh, it's a beautiful thing. It really, really is. It's, when you hold it in your hands and you see the materials and you see the paper and all that stuff. I'm not doing a very good job of marketing there. That's pretty terrible, but it's
Very good. Perfect.
Sorry, I'm short, so it's hard for me to get it up there. It's like to have this be my first book is amazing. And then when I was at the Bookmine the other day, the day before release, signing all the books that had been ordered, I just saw this list of names from people from my whole life that have decided to take an interest and support. And it was really amazing to see so many people that are interested in this. And I really believe, I think it helps to either like wine or art. Certainly, I don't think you have to like both to find something interesting in this book. If you just like things that are beautiful and visually interesting, I think it's the kind of thing that hopefully you can just get a glass of wine and sit on the couch and flip through, and find something new every time. And if you ever have any questions, again, just reach out. I'll tell you all the stories.
Thanks, Jimmy. It is a truly special book. And if you haven't held one in your hands yet, it's got this really texturally beautiful fabric cover that you don't find on very many books these days. We do have a display copy that you can fondle at will at the Pearl Street shop in Napa Bookmine. If you haven't ordered it yet, we are sold out, but we have a bunch more coming on Monday, and then we should get a lot more coming by the end of next week. And we'll make sure to get some up to St. Helena and Oxbow once we have gone through all of these pre-orders that we have. Again, congratulations, Jimmy, on this beautiful book. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us tonight. We hope that you all have a wonderful evening. And one last thing about the book, fabulous Christmas, Hanukkah, winter solstice present, if I might say so. And you'll definitely want to snag those early. Supply chains this year are going to be highly stressed. So don't count on this book being in stock in November or December. We're gonna try to get that mass going right now and make sure everybody's all set for the holidays. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jimmy, so much. I hope you all have a lovely evening.
Bye.
Oh, it's not working. We are